Welcome to the IoT Unicorn podcast. This is Pete Bernard from Microsoft, and this podcast is for anyone interested in the long-term technology trends in the IoT space and the journey from here to there. So let's get started. Coming up on this episode of the IoT Unicorn, we're talking with Wienke Giezeman of the Things Network from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. It's actually second Netherlands in a row podcast. We'll talk a little bit about that, what's going on over in the Netherlands, something in the water, driving a lot of interesting IoT innovation. Also, our last podcast of 2020. It's been a great year, hasn't it? So we're really looking forward to getting into next year, and we already have a few guests coming in the queue, and that's going to be pretty awesome. So really big 2021 coming up, but I want to thank all the listeners for tuning in this year and helping start this thing and growing it. And I think we're now have listeners in about 43 countries, which is fantastic. Lots to talk about in the IoT space moving forward next year. Stay tuned for this one. It's coming up, and enjoy the conversation with Wienke. Thanks. Okay, Wienke, thank you so much for joining us on the IoT Unicorn. Really appreciate it. And having another chat here with someone in Europe. So I'm here nice and early in the morning, and you're in the afternoon. So that sounds good. But I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Pete.
Good. Yeah, actually, I actually had a conversation with Remco Plug of Altius a couple of weeks ago. I actually just published the show today, who's from Rotterdam. And I know that you're based in Amsterdam. So I'm in a bit of a Netherlands streak here, kind of 2 for 2.
Yeah, a lot of things happening here in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam in the region on technology. Yeah, that's true, and specifically on IoT. Actually, there's a lot of
I was going to ask, like, what is going on there? I know NXP, who I work with, also is headquartered there. Is that a from an education system, or just kind of culturally, or is it a lot of startups, or what is the IoT kind of center of gravity in the Netherlands? What is that all about?
Yeah, so it goes way back. So Wi-Fi was invented by a Dutch guy, and as well as Bluetooth, all under international companies, but actually the patents are or the filings are under Dutch names. And my first job was actually at a telco research institute, which was government run, and there's a lot of like new things coming to the Netherlands.
Right.
Another thing you see is that when technology providers or companies want to have a go-to-market in Europe, the Netherlands is this like little cozy place which is friendly to international companies, and it's a great test ground. Look at things like Google Stadia with the gaming platform, for instance. They launched very early in the Netherlands because we have this good internet infrastructure. So I think there's a lot of things happening at the same time, including indeed the educational system, which is pretty cool.
No, that's cool. I mean, I've spent some time in Amsterdam, so it's a fantastic city. I mean, one of the great cities of the world. So hopefully soon get back there in person. But it sounds like there's a lot happening there, and between your company and Altius and NXP and everything else. I mean, it must be as someone who's been sort of in the startup world yourself for a while. I mean, there must be just a lot of connections and networking that you can do there.
Yeah, and it's a great hub for to connect with the rest of the world, and it's also a bit of in the Dutch DNA to do international business, because as a country by itself we're pretty small. So we're used to as entrepreneurs to work with the hub we have, and I think that's also how we started our current company. Is like born in Amsterdam. Launched globally from the start. And then if you just do that by design, then you just have a lot of scalability advantages going your way.
Yeah. And I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, because I always kind of scour the LinkedIn profile of guests before they come on the show. So it looks like you spend time teaching as well. So you do some time teaching eighth graders about business and entrepreneurship. Can you give me a little
Yeah, there was definitely like it was a community effort, but I was asked to do a few weeks, in a few days in a week, to teach kids around like what it is to build a business.
Right.
I did some teaching how to build actually mobile apps, and that's just a very fulfilling community activity. And actually, I didn't do that a lot lately, except from the fact that we do a lot of educational work online with our current company. But it's a good reminder just to check in with the local.
I found it. I mean, it's going back to sort of the culture and entrepreneurship. I mean, a lot of school systems, if you can bring a lot of education into school systems. I actually work with Boston University. They have a program called TISP, T-I-S-P. I'm not sure what it stands for, but essentially they bring engineering students, and I'm a graduate of BU. So they bring engineering students into the Boston public school system to teach engineering classes at the high school level, which is a great way to expose high schoolers to basic engineering. And actually, another thing I did that reminded me of that was there's a school called University Prep here in Seattle, and I've worked with them, and they do some kind of engineering 101 classes, like elective classes, which is cool. And we did a smart city workshop last year with a bunch of the kind of sophomores, juniors, I think some seniors as well, and just to kind of expose them to problem solving. Because, at that level, you're building apps and you're doing some robot competitions, but it's really mostly about how to think about problem solving from an engineering perspective, right? And
and my experience with them is that they have so little constraints in how they think.
Exactly.
And it's always very, 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 very inspiring. And I taught an app making class in using a system that was called Accelerator Titanium. I just was like, after 1 week, I was totally amazed by what kind of stuff they actually built. And it's a bit of a cliche to say this, actually, but it is very true.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Yeah, they came out with all kinds of solutions it was like a faux RFP. So they had to respond to a city that had these issues, and they had to come up with solutions, using technology. And there's like 5G in there and all kinds of stuff. So they had to use different pieces of technology, but they had to present out, the solutions. And there's some wild solutions, moving sidewalks and all kinds of stuff. And of course, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, that's impossible. But from their perspective, it's like, yeah, it makes sense. Moving sidewalks. I mean, but so let's shift gears a little bit. So the things industries, your company, am I pronouncing that correctly? Like the things, how do you refer to it as? The things network, or the things industries, or just the things?
Yeah. So we we've referred to it as the things, and the things network and the things industries resemble a open source business model. So the things network is focused on an open platform, open source, getting you through the hard work of what we call 0 to 1. So getting from an idea to something that you can scale, and the commercial side of this open source business model is in the things industries, where we help you what we call from a 1 to a million and solve these scalability issues. And that's in a nutshell.
And so how long has that been in existence? How long have you been doing that?
So Johan, my business partner and co-founder, and I started this 5 years ago when we first saw this technology called LoRa and LoRaWAN pop up, and a technology that allows you to send small messages over the air, over an open spectrum, at very little cost of both battery consumption and the cost of the devices. And one of the things that we saw 5 years ago that it's gonna, like, the IoT market is a very fragmented market. And the second thing we saw is that if you look at developer ecosystem and tools to help developers lower their risk and lower their investment and lower their time to market, there was actually pretty lagging behind to what Johan and I were used to in the cloud world or in the app development world, right? You have a massive amount of tools on both cloud and development. So we thought, okay, let's just start building that first, because we thought that was critical to address a fragmented market in IoT.
Yeah.
And and the hypothesis was let's just throw open source code and developer tools in the market until something commercially sticks. And after 6 to 12 months, companies came to us as enterprise, said, okay, we now got the hang of it. We understand it. We think this technology works for us. Can you help us further? And furthermore, we developed our enterprise business on and helping companies around the world building their LoRaWAN networks.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about LoRaWAN. So it's we've had other folks on the show. We had Qualcomm on here. We've had other folks talking about LPWA in general and NB-IoT and stuff. But LoRaWAN is interesting because it's you can think of wireless technologies as licensed and unlicensed, right? The spectrum and the kind of frequency and the way the air vibrates. And in the licensed spectrum, that's typically run by like telcos and like sort of think Verizon and Vodafone and things like that. And then unlicensed is more of like what you would think of like Wi-Fi and other bands of the spectrum that have been made available to just use openly by anyone. And so LoRaWAN is an unlicensed spectrum technology, right? It operates in that frequency and provides something similar to kind of an NB-IoT or LTE-M capability, right? Super low power, low transmission rate, but over very long distances. Is that about right?
Yeah. So basically, where the core business driver is in all this technology, where LoRaWAN and LoRa is good. So you have to distinguish LoRa as the RF technology, which is embedded in chips that are sold by Semtech, and Microchip has a SKU and ST Micro also. And then you have LoRaWAN, which is basically the network management layer on top of this.
Right.
And if you look at LoRa, the unique thing and the unique position it has in the market is that it can run devices that can run on a battery for very long. And if you then relate that to how that affects the total cost of ownership of your IoT solution, is that it basically reduces the maintenance costs of your IoT network by not having somebody to replace the battery every time. That is the most simple business case explanation of what LoRa is. The long range is nice, but the longer the range, the higher the better power consumption, and the lower the battery. While what we see is that LoRaWAN is finding quite some significant traction in building IoT networks for sites, and is finding a very complementary position next to technologies like what you just say, 5G, LTM, CBRS, et cetera, et cetera. And I think one of the advantages that it has adds as well is that it is a quite stable, rugged network management protocol called LoRaWAN, governed by an organization called the LoRa Alliance. And what's really nice around that is that protocol is packed with features also how to help you with provisioning. And that also, if you relate to total cost of ownership and easing the process of installation and making sure that it's going according to standard, I think that's the second big distinguishing factor of the LoRaWAN ecosystem.
And so a LoRa chip using LoRaWAN would connect back to a gateway. But my understanding is, and again, I'm just going off the videos, it's about, you can have about 10,000 LoRa devices hanging off of a gateway up to 10 kilometers in length, in distance. Is that about right? Because that sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that is like the boundaries, the extreme. And then for technology to work, you have to work within an inner circle where you can provide a 99% SLA. Yeah. So that's the extreme. We even send a message over 802 kilometers, and we did that by letting up a weather balloon, and we put a sensor on there, and that actually was a message sent from the Netherlands to somewhere on a mountain in Czech Republic, and the weather balloon allows you to cheat the curvature of the Earth because like the limit. So, but these are nice stories that show you the edge cases, and the topology the network is a star. So you build gateways. You can have cheap indoor gateways that start from $70, and then you can have indeed more like cellular type and carrier grade devices from like that are of course more expensive.
Right.
And then the sensors, they use that transceiver. That's picked up by this gateway, and the gateway is completely managed by the cloud. And the architecture is created in a way that most of the complexity is deviated to something called the LoRaWAN network server, and that's our bread and butter. That's our core business, and we. And that means that a lot of that management is done in the cloud, and I think what's interesting there is that it's the standard is as an IoT standard, you have to implement a lot of standard ways because it's by law, because you have to do it: security, key management, data handling, and what we're trying to do is to just be an adapter between the IoT platform that the customer uses and LoRaWAN network, because we see that LoRaWAN is an extension of what you're already doing with IoT.
Sure.
And that's the general architecture. So sensor, gateway, a LoRaWAN network server, and then your IoT platform.
Right. I was looking at this data from IoT Analytics. It's a analysis or a analyst company, I should say, not analysis, an analyst company. And so they were saying LoRa is about 40% of the market, and with NB-IoT sort of at the other 40. So it's really kind of, those are the two big ones that are out there. I know there's others like Sigfox and other things and LTM, which are interesting and they're really cool. Horses for courses, as they would say in the UK. But LoRa and NB-IoT seem to be sort of the two big ways of doing it. And I think one of the other things we've talked about on the show before is another topic we talk about is edge AI and how to do things on the edge that are, accelerated AI model execution and things like that. And then the idea is that the more you can do on the edge, the more efficient you can be about the network and the transmission of data back to the cloud, right? So if you have, image sensing and things and cameras and things on the edge, they don't necessarily need to stream video to the cloud. They don't need to upload images. They can do things on the edge themselves and then just send the metadata or the control data back to the cloud and over a low power network like some kind of LPWA network like LoRa, right? Is that a use case that you've been seeing at all yet, or?
Yeah. So what you're seeing is that if you like the bandwidth that LoRaWAN brings is very low. Yeah. So if you can do a lot of analysis on the edge, then that's very interesting. So for instance, you could make a camera that you point at a parking lot, and then the camera runs something like OpenCV, and it just counts the amount of cars, or it just gives you a grid on which parking places are taken and which one are free, and then that small piece of data you can send back, let's say, every 10 to 15 minutes. That makes a lot of sense. You see that there's more sensors that, for instance, measure in general how busy it is. By, for instance, we have these people counters. What they basically do, they count a unique amount of MAC addresses that a simple Wi-Fi module sees, and it just responds to number. Now, if you look at, for instance, what is Europe is leading in privacy regulations and called by using GDPR. And what's interesting is that all of a sudden this limitation and this constraint is going to be a privacy feature, because what's not allowed in the Netherlands is just to pass around all these MAC addresses randomly and just track these, let's say, anonymized travelers. But if you just send the number, all of a sudden becomes compliant.
Right.
And so yeah, we see that. And I think also if you look at predictive maintenance, and we're working together with a company called Edge Impulse, and they build training software for these, let's say, constrained devices. And we're going to launch a product that probably when this airs, we have launched that product. We're going to launch a product that has quite some capable AI power on the edge that can process vibration sensing and that.
Anomaly detection. I mean, that's a big topic. How you can measure current or vibration or other really kind of interesting predictors of either upcoming trouble or otherwise device health or edge health. And by the way, the noise you probably heard in the background was my coffee grinder. So I think my daughter was she's starting her school day, and so that always kicks off in the morning. So that was that noise. A lot of coffee drinkers here in the Seattle area, but it's kind of interesting. So the throughput though on a LoRa or LoRaWAN is around what's the edge throughput you mentioned is like 100 kilobits per second, or is it less than that or more than that or?
Yeah, so what I always try to say is I think around like sending a text message on data every 10 minutes. So that is more like a reference. But we highly advocate to further encode the message when necessary, because every message is consuming data, right? Every message needs to address the encryption feature of the MCU. It needs to address the transceiver. Like that's the most costly thing you can do. So we always say it's like keep the data short. And if you look at temperature sensing, if you look at smart mouse traps, we have, for instance, air tags for cows on our network, occupation room sensors. A lot of the time you can already on the sensor side make sure that you're really, really aware of your resources. So most of the time I say just do less. Don't see it as streaming data. That's basically what a message is.
I like that metaphor of text messaging. You mentioned mouse traps. We're actually working with a company that's doing it's a pest control company, and they have some wireless sensors to detect, I guess whether there's a pest there or something. I don't know, but it's interesting, how you're seeing companies you really wouldn't think would be really into using AI or tech or wireless IoT to really start using that technology. But so I don't know.
But that's a good sign.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Once we stop talking about the technology, it's here, right? Like IoT is still a thing, right? You can still. So like once we stop with that, then
and it actually gets into real solutions and stuff. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And so is there speaking of deployments, I mean, what is your sort of favorite signature deployment of LoRa tech that you've referenced to people to give them a good example of wow, that they really took advantage of the tech?
Yeah. So what I always think is that we are in the industry, and we are guilty of that, is that we are opportunistic tech pushing people, and we just push tech until it sticks. And we are we have a solution mindset, and we need to find other people that have a problem mindset, right? So they are in the industry. And I think one of the things that if people ask me, okay, so give me give me a very good IoT idea. I always say, go to your local certification house and go interview one of the random consultants for an hour and just ask them, okay, what kind of certification and compliancy that you guys run is operational a heavy burden on your customer, and then fix that problem. And because the problem is that if you're going with this entrepreneurial solution opportunistic approach, then you're always ending up building a nice to have, right? But if you're solving a compliancy problem, we have customers that help. That have solutions built on top of our platform that help them build, for instance, compliance reports for foods in restaurants and in the fridges. This company in the US called Compliance Mate, and they're specialists at it, and they build a very mature system to help enterprises do that, and they just save them very concrete, maybe it's 0.3 FTE per restaurant. And then
like a cold chain? Is that like a cold chain kind of scenario?
I wouldn't say cold chain because the business case is really on site, and once you go into cold chain, it becomes very complex
Right.
from a technology point of view. But that's, I mean, of course, we have also customers that do that. But this is so just to go back to your question, what are the really
cool deployments?
Like cool, yeah. For me, cool now. Like I think when I started, cool was like rhino tracking or like a lot of cool. Like more out of the box things, but this like, yeah, this one has a very solid.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it's we're in the solution business too, and we try to really get to business outcomes with our customers as quickly as possible. And it turns out it's not super glamorous to save a bunch of money and be a lot more efficient and effective. But that's kind of what makes businesses really move and move forward and able to do certain things. And there are the signature deployments, like you said, the Rhino tracking. In fact, we had Sarah Maston on here from Microsoft, who's been doing a lot of anti-poaching work using the Azure platform. But there's also the non-glamorous sort of instrumentation and telemetry that's necessary.
Yeah, and scalable. So most of the time, the non-glamorous stuff is as scalable as it is, and I think it's a good sign that you have this phase of that becoming more mature, becoming more integrated, becoming more standardized, and becoming more cost effective as well. Right. And that's really good to see. We really see the amount of devices that being deployed rising, and we see more and more companies in the market that are competent. Because I mean, to be honest, 9 out of 10 IoT a proof of concept don't make it to the market to scale, and we as technology providers can only make sure that we fix these drivers that break your 10,000 to 100,000 device business case.
Right.
And and that's not glamorous.
No, it's not, but it's wheels go around. I assume you must have a bunch of like agriculture deployments. I mean, it sounds like LoRa and agriculture go hand in hand in terms of acreage and outdoors and just and having wireless connectivity. I know you can do it through like NB-IoT and doing it that way. That's one way, but I assume also for farmers that are deploying solutions using agriculture and things, that must be a pretty sweet spot.
We have multiple partners. One who is more in the high margin crops like vineyards and almonds. That's Vinvino, and they. What's really interesting about that is that they have both sensors and actuators. So they sense the moisture of the field, and then they actuate the drainage, and then they measure again how effective the drainage is. And the stories from them is just, it's such an inspiration that they not only help give them insight in the field, but they also give them insight in how effective is my drainage system, because they're adding a smart meter to it. That is actually like they know how much water actually ends up in the field. They never knew. Another customer of us is called Movement. It's a spin-off of a large Dutch agriculture bank called Rabobank, and we're together with them. We're tracking thousands of cows in like these open farm fields in Australia. And then if you dive into that, and it's just such an interesting field. And we just did a webinar actually, and the founder, he explained me about bull performance. All kinds of metrics I never knew about that go around cattle. And the other one is a company called Sensoterra, which has like this multi-level moisture meter. So it has a very long moisture meter, and then it presents that the data, and that is starting to scale, and it's very interesting as well, because we're in this midst of a water crisis, and there's just so much opportunity to
water management
for
sure. No, it's fascinating. So I also read that you've done some work to connect your system to Azure. There's some sort of bridge implementation that you have, so people that are on Azure for other kind of data processing stuff can sort of leverage your tech and sort of make it all work together. And So that looks like that's been a pretty good partnership.
Yeah, that's great, and I think what we're trying to do is that we have a product vision that we're trying to build open technology that doesn't create a lock-in or like an IoT platform potentially can do. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that the generic IoT functions that of course are also in LoRaWAN, you can actually delegate them to also your centralized. So for instance, a very simple example is that when you do LoRaWAN devices, you have to manage the root keys. But for instance, as a CIO, I spend money on a very expensive consultant that created a security policy for me. And the security policy says, okay, we're going to use Azure Key Vault. This is the storage, and these employees in the company, they actually have access. So what we do is that when you integrate our system into the Azure cloud, you can say, okay, the root keys need to store in Azure Key Vault.
Right.
So another thing that we do is that your device management can be delegated to Azure IoT Central.
Right.
So then you have a central place because you also have your LTM devices, you also have your Bluetooth devices, you also have your ESP Wi-Fi devices. And another example is that they're working on a new reference design for LoRaWAN products, next generation, and we're working with also a support for Azure RTOS to make that integration easier. And it's all driven around the hypothesis that we see that the market and CIOs are more moving towards serverless and building a core team that has generic Azure skills.
Right.
And it's our job to make sure that we can extend that Azure capability with the niche technology of LoRaWAN. Yeah, and we see as that is our duty, and then it's just a plugin.
Yeah,
exactly. and that's being received very well.
Exactly. I think one of the phrases I've heard Jason Zander, who's our EVP, say is like, we don't want to sell people chemistry sets. We want to sell them solutions. They can actually deploy and get their results, So I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there like a tech, like if you had to think of something that could hyper accelerate your business that doesn't exist yet, that if you could snap your fingers sort of Thanos style, and make this thing show up, what is the thing that no pun intended, that you think, is some tech that would really hyper accelerate your business? Is there something that you wish would be here that you think is going to be here maybe 10 years from now?
So from the true tech thing, I think in every industry it's power management. So we have a lot of exponential growing kind of technologies, but batteries is still it's still the linear growth, and also the maturation of energy harvesting. So you will find a lot of solutions around energy harvesting. The ones that are truly mature that can run in production is a bit harsh. Another one is solutions for e-waste. So I think one of the things that are going to hit the IoT industry is that the global regulators are going to not allow disposable IoT products. So we need to have that just from a regulation point of view. So I think these are true drivers from a technology perspective.
And I go back to some of the original hypothesis actually around this podcast is around the idea of self-powered, always connected, edge AI, secure endpoints is kind of the ultimate goal of what we're trying to get to with a lot of IoT tech, at least. And so LoRa and kind of what you're doing is right at the heart of that. And you mentioned batteries and power consumption. It used to be about battery life on laptops and airplanes, and now it's really more about, sustainability. And also, just the ability to deploy things out into remote areas and have them be self-powered and powered over long periods of time, whether it's, oil pipelines or agriculture or water metering or whatever it is. So it's really kind of fundamental. I mean, it's a good choice to say, like, if we could do something around energy harvesting and power, then we can then sort of take these things out there for a decade or more and have them out there in much more effective ways. So is there anything else on your mind? I think we're gonna hit our 30-minute time limit at some point, but we might be over, but that's okay. Anything else that you want to throw out there that people should know in terms of call to action or anything like that?
Yeah, so for our personally, we run a LoRaWAN conference actually, which we have in January, and we try to position it as a no nonsense IoT conference where we have product managers and developers talk about like the successes they made and the failures and how you can learn. So that's something we do with the thingsnetwork.org, our open source community, and there are 125,000 members, and together we usually have a event in Amsterdam, but now we have it online.
Yeah,
virtual event. So of course, everybody's invited there. And so that would definitely be
okay. That's a good one. It's good, timely advice going into the holidays. So I before we started recording, we were talking about holidays and how we just finished Thanksgiving here, and it was kind of certainly a unique one, hopefully a unique experience. But I do wish you well for the holidays coming up, and hope you stay healthy and happy. And hopefully, once this all sort of settles down next year, we'll probably meet face to face at some point. Hopefully, so that'll be good.
Yeah, I hope so. I definitely hope so. And I need to go back to Seattle again. Right? Like this is my. I always have my yearly trip, but So 2021, it's going to be.
Excellent. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate the time, and people should go to the thingsnetwork.org and check out more stuff, and keep in touch. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay. Thanks. This is Pete Bernard. You've been listening to the IoT Unicorn podcast, and thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode, and feel free to give us some feedback at the IoT Unicorn at Microsoft.com. Thank you.